Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fullcast's Fireside Chat. I'm your host, Tyler Simons. I am the head of customer success at Fullcast, and we are a go-to-market planning and execution platform. Let's talk about compensation design. Oh, yes. Very excited about this today. We have our guest, Sandeep Singh, and he's with WordPress VIP. Sandeep, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing over at WordPress?
Thanks, Tyler. Hello, everyone. I'm a sales growth and revenue operations leader who helps revenue teams achieve their go-to-market objectives. I'm currently working as VP of Sales Operations at WordPress VIP, a leading provider of agile content management platform, helping enterprise customers produce digital contents faster and smarter while ensuring best-in-class security and scalability. Prior to this role, I worked in revenue operations advisory for high-growth clients. And before that, I spent several years in sales finance strategy operations for established public companies. I'm really excited here, Tyler, to talk about sales compensation because it's an important area of revenue operations and a key factor in revenue team success. So looking forward to this conversation here.
Same. We've had a lot of good pre-talks, if we want to call it that, and I've been looking forward to this. But before we go in, you just started at WordPress VIP, so I just want to say congrats to that. Super excited for you.
Thank you.
All right, compensation design fundamentals. So let's just start with some of the mistakes people can make, because I usually build up this foundation and stuff, but I think we should talk a little bit about some of the mistakes that some people might hit into, address, and we'll go from there. So what is some of the biggest mistakes that people can make when designing a comp package?
Yeah, so that's a good question. These are the things that, I see there are 5 or 6 mistakes, if you will, that companies make, and that could apply to startups, scale-ups, or even mature companies. So it doesn't matter in terms of the stage of the company stages. So the first one is, comp plan should be aligned to company strategy. So the mistake is that if they're not aligned to company strategy, then that doesn't really work, and that doesn't drive the right kind of growth for the company. And it sounds very obvious, but then when you look at it, peel the onion, then that if whether the company is looking at growth at any cost or profitable growth, right? We are living in some kind of a downturn environment, and companies are looking for profitable growth as well. So those are the things, there are some distinction there. And are we asking our reps to go and sell at any cost, or look at the profitability as well while driving growth? So those are the things to look into. The second thing I would say that,
before we go into that next one, what about a good example of that? Something I would, just because I'm curious to know a little bit more, or maybe it's being able to identify maybe, hey, this comp plan really isn't actually aligned to what our goals are.
Yeah. So one example would be, if a company has multiple products, and let's say one product has high ACV and high margin, takes longer time to close the deal. Another product is lower ACV, low margin, and very transactional type of things, easy to close. If the reps have one revenue bucket to go after, and that's their quota, they could just fill their quota with easy sells. That could be low ACV, low margin, but that not basically eventually drive the company profitability if the company is looking for profitability in their main objective. So that's the example of, is your comp plan aligned with the company strategic objective, the GTM objectives? So those are subtle differences there, right? Companies, of course, change their strategies, but do you change your comp plan to align with that strategy is the key.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what's number 2?
The number 2 is keeping same plan for multiple roles. You have AEs, you have SDRs, BDRs, expansion AEs, CSMs, all the different roles. A lot of times, some companies basically say, hey, we are all one revenue team. Let's have one plan for everyone. We are all one team and go and kill it. Kind of. So what we need to look into is every role's responsibilities are different. So we need to have different plans for them because their degree of selling influence is different. So companies should take a note of that and design plans and pay mixes. And by pay mix, I mean fixed salary versus variable commission comp plan, right? Commission as a portion of the OTE. So pay mixes and the revenue measures, the plan measures should be taken into consideration while designing the plan. So that's number 2.
Yeah. So could a good example of this just be, and this is very simple in my world, which is just like, we have the SDRs, excuse me, and we have the AEs. You have one comp plan for both of them. It's probably not ideal. And maybe you need to think about things like an SDR probably should be, have a piece of their comp plan. I'm not saying their entire comp plan, but it may be a piece of it based off of like number of calls or number of meetings generated or opportunities generated, where the AEs might be just like closed one. That's kind of what you're talking about, is like differentiating the plans in that regard, right?
Yeah, a couple of things. Yeah, so in that example, AE, the AE have the outcomes, the revenue, the closed deals. In fact, that actually leads to the the third mistake also. So I'll combine the 2 and 3 together right now.
Yeah.
If the plans are not outcome or impact based, then that basically has those plans are least effective. So in your example here, more than the number of calls placed or number of calls made or demos presented, if you can tie it back to how many calls converted into closed won deals, how many demos converted into those. So if you tie those impacts and outcomes to the plan measures for the SDRs in your example, that would be key. So if the companies are just making on the number of activities and tasks and goaling their reps on that, that's sort of least effective.
Yeah.
And the other thing I mentioned about the pay mixes, right? So industry standard nowadays is like for AEs, it's about 50-50, right? 50% of your OTE is on fixed salary and 50% on commissions. Some of the business development team members will have probably less leveraged plan. Could be, you would have a little bit of higher salary fixed portion and lower variable portion. So you could have that as a in terms of the industry benchmark that we see, you can alter those things. So different plans for different roles, and outcome-based, impact-based plan measures should be there in the comp plans.
Is there a fourth one?
Yeah, there's a fourth one.
Let's go into the fourth one, because I might come back to this other idea
Yes.
that I have later. So I want to.
Sure.
I don't want to completely.
There are 3 more, I would say. So total, there are I could think of 6 mistakes actually. So the fourth one is companies making plans too complex for reps to understand. They spend a whole lot of time in understanding the calculations of their commissions. And so that makes it less motivating for them as well. So I would say that plans have to align to the strategy, but then you have to balance it with the simplification. One example here would be a lot of companies basically put the 0 to 100% quota attainment. They will have different layers of commission rates. You have 0 to 30% one commission rate, a rep will get 30 to 60, and then 60 to 100. And then you also put some acceleration beyond 100%. So there will be multiple layers of acceleration. You have so many different commission rates to work with. I would basically suggest that, cut it down to make it more simpler, I would say. Similarly, if you have a lot of products in your portfolio for reps to sell, I mentioned earlier about the margin profiles of products being different, right?
Yeah.
And you create a lot of hurdles, constraints for reps to achieve their quota and targets. That basically makes plan very complex. And so that's what I would suggest, that try to balance the simplicity with the objective. So in that case, what I would do is 0 to 100%, not have too many layers. Same thing for acceleration, not have too many different commission rate percentages. Keep it balanced.
I would say here's the clues. If you see reps spending more time building a spreadsheet to calculate how much they're getting paid, or you're getting a lot of questions about, well, what happens if I close this deal, and with all these different layers and stuff. Those are the two things I would, if you're starting to see those things happen, then you might want to take a look at how complex your plan is and see if
Right.
you can simplify it. At least that's kind of like I've seen.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
anyway,
and that, and connected to that is that the point I would like to make is that the communication to the reps,
yeah,
explaining the plan to them is also very important. So that is my fifth mistake here, not communicating well enough and in a timely manner.
yeah,
So when the quarter starts, you want to make sure that the reps understand what the plan is going to be. You don't want your reps to fly blind for weeks and weeks where your quarter has already started. So communicating to all the stakeholders in the GTM team, and when I say all the stakeholders, not just the sales team, but communicate to marketing, communicate to HR, product team. Everybody should be aware of how the sales team is getting paid on things that they all collaboratively work together on.
yeah,
So communicating to them in a timely manner would be important. And then communication means like putting all the illustrations and examples of how their commission is being calculated. So you reduce the time that they spend in understanding how they're getting paid. So that's the number 5. And then the last thing I would say is that too many SPIFFs. Companies basically put too many SPIFFs, throw that at the reps, that, okay, hey, here is this product we want to drive growth on. Hey, this is what we want to drive more on. So that basically also is a distraction in a way, based on what the core day-to-day job that the rep is doing, right? Yeah. So while SPIFFs are important to attain short-term objectives, it should not be run in a, the same SPIFF should not be run in a continuous manner for a longer time, is what I would suggest. So it should help with your short-term objective. Hey, this is the quarter. We need to achieve objective A, and we are really missing on it. Let's focus on that. Drive some SPIFF, very targeted, impact-based, and make that communication very clear. So too many SPIFFs distracts them, creates a lack of focus on their core objective. So those are the 6 mistakes I would say.
Let's talk about this impact-based stuff, because this is what I wanted to come back to. And I am I'm a bit, me personally, confused on what it is that impact-based really is. So let's talk about the SDRs for a bit. In your world, or in your definition of impact-based or outcome-based, because I think those are the same, right?
Yeah.
Yep. For SDRs, would saying generating a number of qualified opportunities, would that be impact-based or outcome-based, or is it more like closed one? That is like the true like end goal there.
So the qualified leads are definitely an important factor to measure them on. But then what I would look into is that what is our conversion on those qualified leads in closed won deals? Mm-hmm. So if you actually put some kind of measure around actually turning those leads into revenue or closed won deals, those will be the impact or the outcome. Because a rep could generate 100 qualified leads, but then AEs are not able to close it. Why? Because maybe there was some issue with the ICP. It just doesn't really fit well with our perfect customer profile there, and or the ICP that we're targeting. And they are just bringing in hundreds and hundreds of leads. They are actually reaching their quota. They will get paid, but then companies not making money, and reps the AEs are not attaining their quota. So those that's an example there.
One of the things that I've seen, and I just want to, it's like a thought exercise here, is that the longer deal cycles, right? So let's talk, maybe the sales cycles like a year or longer. Paying SDRs on, like, let's say closed won per se, or even the conversion rate, which would be difficult because you have to, the conversion rate is kind of like this long tail, 12 months, you'll know what that actual conversion rate is, can be a little bit hard for at least some like SDRs to wait that long to see what's going to happen because they're so focused on this top of funnel thing. How do you address like that type of dynamic where, you know, an SDR is so focused top of funnel, but has to wait maybe 12 months before they actually get paid out on closed one, and it's kind of in the hands of the AE at some point to actually close a deal? How have you seen work through those types of things?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of for the new companies, of course, you will not have any history, right? The historical data to look at. For companies that have some kind of a history, they can actually look into the kind of leads that they are generating and what conversion rate you're producing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that SDR should only what I'm saying is that it has to be a combination of the qualified leads with some measure of impact and the outcome. Because those are the things you would actually look into your data to figure out whether the leads are being generated just for the sake of being generated, or those are actually turning into cash for the company, right? So in your example of the long cycle, it all depends on what the quota cadence is. Is it a quarterly plan the rep is working on, or is it semi-annual or annual plan, right?
Yeah.
So different companies in different stages and different sales cycles have different quota cadences, right? So if it is a long sales cycle, generally the quota cadence tends to be longer. SDRs who have quarterly plans, generally, in that companies will have sales cycle, 6 months or something. It will range from 3 to 6 months, 3 to 8 months, something like that.
Makes sense.
So in that case, of course, you look at the data and figure out that is it converting in that time frame, and refine that metric, as you collect more data, and then put that into the metric for them.
And I think you answered my question also.
The thing here is that like your ICP has to be solid, right? And you want to make sure that the progression, the deal progression that you see in stages, are we seeing all the conversion rates? It doesn't mean that conversion rate all the way in the closed one is the only thing. You can also see conversion rate to the next stage, right? SDRs passed on to the AEs had the demo. So you're looking at the SQL to SAL, if you will, conversion, and then you're looking at from that stage to the next stage conversion. So those things are also good metrics to see whether the leads are good enough, quality enough, right? Those are the quality leads to address to.
Perfect. I think that's great, because that's like, you don't have to wait till closed one. Maybe it's you look for a conversion somewhere earlier in the funnel, or you do a mix of two different things. Granted, you don't want to go into this like massively complex comp package, which leads us into kind of what we want to talk a little bit about is as companies grow, there's just this need or this feeling that we've got to make our comp package more complex, right? It just kind of like naturally happens. There's more people, more things going on, more products, more stuff to be sold. So how do like as companies grow, like how do they maintain that like balance between like a simple comp plan versus something that's a little bit more complex?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, like as the companies grow, they do have more products, more services, more people. For early stage company, a very, very simple plan will do it, right? One thing, just go. One simple plan for everyone, like for a couple of people. But as the company evolves into its own sales force and the product and services, yes, you have to basically bring in all the different components. What I was mentioning about the simplicity here is all about balancing the company strategy with simplification. And that's where I was saying that if you have too many complex calculation to get to a number, to get to the payout, that should be looked into, and that we can simplify. Looking at different products and services and where company wants to focus on, and that's what you want to basically make sure that those are reflected in the comp plan. So as the company matures, definitely those are the things people look into more. You create, let's say you have 2 products and you want to drive product A more, then one example would be you give some kind of create some kind of a gating mechanism for attaining certain level of product A before they can get a lot of accelerated payout, those kind of things, right? So mature companies or scale-up companies or companies that have multiple products, multiple services, they would look into those things because those are the things that align to their strategy. Those are the things they want to drive for more of, right? At the really, really early stage, Series A, Series B, you're talking about their idea is to let's get to the growth mode first, like get a growth at any cost, get more customers. So a lot of those things kind of come later in the stage of the company evolution, but those are the things you basically look at in designing the comp plan.
Yeah, I think you also talked a little bit about this in the mistakes part too. The SPIFFs piece, right? That adds to complexity. So keeping yourself focused to one specific SPIFF, maybe per quarter or whatever it is that you're trying to drive, not having like 8 different SPIFFs going on at the same time. That's some complexity there that a lot of people will introduce, and they don't notice it because they're just like, you have so many stakeholders saying, we got to go do this and we got to do that.
Yeah.
So there's like that creep there, and then
also on that SPIFF, I would just call it out. One thing here is that if a company thinks that one SPIFF is going to run for a long time, just bake it into the comp plan, and not call it SPIFF.
Yeah.
It could become a comp plan component, one of your measures as part of the plan. So it stays forever, forever in the sense like as long as the company strategy is there.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. The SPIFF should only address short-term objectives.
So I want to move on. I want to talk about territories.
Mm-hmm.
And how they fit into this world of compensation design, like how the two interact. And this is something that I see on my side a ton. So when we start to think about territories, and territories you're actually doing territory planning and design. It's not just like this all-you-can-eat world and everyone's just trading around accounts. You're building territories. You've got segments, enterprise, mid-market, SMB. How do you see designing like a comp package around the way territories have built? And we'll probably talk about some examples, but I'm going to stop there and we'll go through that.
Yeah. So again, the answer would be like different stages of the company, right? So if you are early stage company, you may not have a very well-defined territory. So that means all the leads that are coming to the AEs could be, everybody's like, covering entire territory, everything. And it could be distributed on a round robin basis because there is no solid territory structure defined. But on the other hand, if the company has established territory mapping done, customer segmentation is good, territory mapping is good, looking at the, again, historical data, if you have, in terms of the business that we have done in those particular territories, based on geography or verticals or whatnot, you have number of accounts, what business we have done there, what ACV potential we have there. If those things are all solidified, then that helps in quota setting. That helps in compensation a lot. Huge difference. Mm-hmm. That basically what it gives you, territory gives the account ownership to the reps. They can own that whole the territory ownership to the rep. They can basically own it. They can have a solid customer relationship there. It increases the productivity and whatnot. I mean, you know that. I mean, your company is doing all that territory management product there. So that is exactly what the territories benefits are. That benefits of the territories are, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't have a solidified territories, but then basically you're just basically working on the leads, trying to grow the business, close the deals in as early as possible. So those are the differences, right? So eventually every company should basically look into a well-defined territory for their reps to go after.
Do you see, this is an interesting question, because I don't know the answer to this. Do you see territories informing how you think about maybe a quota setting process, or do you see quotas or potential quotas, if you want to call it that, because it might be like just an early stage, informing how you build or balance territories?
It goes. I would say it goes both ways. And here is how.
Yeah.
Because when you have the territory, for example, let's say example is like you have East, Central, West territory, right?
Yeah.
For this given company, if you have more customers in West territory and very few in the East, you will not have a rep sitting in the East territory and twiddling their thumb because they don't have anybody to any leads to work on, right? So that's where because if you want to have that's where I said the second component comes into play. You want to give a decent amount of quota and balance the territories. If your territories are not mature enough, then you rebalance and look into a different way of slicing and dicing in terms of account mapping for the reps. So that's where your quota could be dictating the territories, balancing a little bit. But on the other hand, like a real good scenario would be a real mature or I would say evolved company. Product market fit is very good. Your ICP is very good. Customers love your product or services. And your customers are scattered, very well across the board. Then having a solid territory based on geography, for example, would work just fine. And you have in our example those 3 territories I talked about, and within those territories, then you're looking at what are my potential customers are, how I have how the companies have booked their in that business in that territories, and also you look at the potential. Because if you every time you're just not going based on the historical data, but also looking at what potential we have doing business in this particular period or beyond. So those things will dictate as well. And you can set the quota for reps, even if the territory is very uncharted. You can actually give the account protection in terms of the floor payment. Some kind of generally I don't like capping the rep payout, but I would like to give some kind of a guarantee of floor payment right that way, so they can work on the uncharted territory with not much of business there, not much information there, and they go and hunt. But if you have a solidly evolved territories, then that makes it much more easier for you to balance around the account potential.
What if you what if you can't balance the territory? Like you're going geos. This is going to be mostly geos, right? Like if you're, building, let's say 5 territories in like a financial services industry, you could probably balance those out by like distributing the potential out among those 5, as long as they're not geo specific. But if you've got a rep, let's say based in North Dakota, let's just take North Dakota, and you build the geo around North Dakota, and it's North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana. And that's it. That's all that's available. The potential there might be a lot less than, let's say, San Francisco, the rep that's based in San Francisco. Is it possible to just like assign out 2 different quotas there?
Yes.
Like, have you seen that done?
Absolutely, yes. So because the account potential in Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota is very less. So it's possible that you could set a very low quota for that rep and still not overpay from company expense perspective.
Yeah.
Because you're setting low quota, and that drives the lower commission. So any deals that they book, they will get more or less the similar kind of. Again, I'm not assuming that the target incentive is also in line with the way you have it in South Dakota versus San Francisco, right? So the point here is that you can have set less quota or based on the account potential in that territory and manage it that way rather than having similar quota for both.
Yeah, makes sense. So at the beginning of this conversation, I told you I always run over. We're over time. Do you have any parting thoughts for us?
No, I think this was great. I think I love chatting about compensation or anything in revenue operations, sales operations, and just enjoyed chatting with you. And if anybody wants to connect with me, they can connect with me on LinkedIn. My handle over there is Sandeep-Singh01. So they can always reach me for any questions they have.
The first Sandeep on LinkedIn, 01. Love it. Thank you so much for joining us today. I feel like we just scratched the surface of it, but we did cover a lot, so that was great. And thanks again. Congrats on the new role. And until next time, everyone, have a good one.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.